Tucked away at the very end of the New Testament, there's this letter that's short, it's strange, and honestly, it's pretty severe. Most people, they just skip right over it. But this little letter from Jude is this incredibly powerful warning. It's like he's a surgeon with a scalpel ready to cut out a cancer. He saw a danger that was so huge, he knew he had to write a message that was just as sharp. So, what's with all the intensity, right? Why did this message have to be so sharp? It's because Jude saw a danger that was threatening to tear the community apart, not from the outside, but from the inside out. He was convinced there was this hidden corruption spreading, and man, he had to sound the alarm. And this really gets to the heart of it. The author Jude, and get this, he says he's a brother of Jesus. He tells us he wanted to write this nice, pleasant letter about their shared salvation, but he just couldn't. He felt like he absolutely had to send this urgent plea instead. And he calls the fight for truth a painful struggle. Why? Well, probably because it often means confronting people you know, people inside your own community. Okay, so let's get into the problem. Jude isn't warning about some external attack, like persecution or something. In fact, you could argue those kinds of threats often make a community even stronger, right? They pull everyone together. Nope. The real danger, the one he's so worried about, is internal. It's a corruption that has already gotten inside, kind of like a cancer in the body, just quietly poisoning the whole fellowship. And the words he uses to describe this are, wow, they're so descriptive, almost sneaky themselves. He says these people have sneaked in, that they've wormed their way in. Think about that. They aren't outsiders attacking the gates, no. These are insiders. They're at the same gatherings, eating the same meals, but they're acting like these hidden reefs under the water, just waiting to wreck everything. So the big question is, how does this cancer actually spread? Well, Jude doesn't just leave us guessing. He gives us a remarkably clear diagnosis. He lays out this totally predictable pattern of corruption, a process he saw happening back then, and honestly one that's just as relevant in all kinds of communities today. He breaks it down into this 4-staged downward spiral, and it all starts with the creed, what people actually believe. From there, it infects their conduct, their actions. That, in turn, forges their character. And finally, it all comes bubbling to the surface in their conversation. See how that works? Each stage is a direct result of the one right before it. So, stage 1, it all begins with a corruption of belief. Jude points to 2 really specific bad ideas. First, this sentimental view of God, where his grace gets all twisted into a license for immorality. You know the type. God is just a nice old guy who wants everyone to be happy and doesn't really take sin seriously. The second bad idea? A syncretistic view of Jesus. This is where he's no longer the only master, but just one of many ways to God, kind of thrown into a spiritual buffet with all the other options. Okay, now we're at stage 2. Jude makes a crystal clear connection here. Once that foundation of what you believe is cracked, it's not going to be long before people's conduct just goes completely off the rails. He's basically saying that what you believe will always determine how you behave. Bad ideas, they inevitably lead to bad actions. It's a simple but powerful formula. And to prove his point, Jude doesn't mess around. He pulls out 3 heavyweight examples from history. He reminds his readers, hey, even God's chosen people, Israel, they were judged in the wilderness after being rescued from Egypt. And get this, even angels weren't exempt when they abandoned their posts. And then, of course, there's Sodom and Gomorrah. The message is just stark. No group, no matter how special, is immune to the consequences of corrupt conduct. And this progression, it's just relentless. You know that old saying, sow an act, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character? That's exactly what Jude is describing here in stage 3. These repeated bad actions are no longer just things you do, they actually start to become who you are. They corrupt your very character from the inside out. And to paint a picture of this, Jude points to 3 infamous archetypes of corrupt character. First, he brings up the murderous anger and jealousy of Cain. Then there's the avarice of Balaam, the prophet who basically sold out the truth for a quick buck. And finally, the rebellious ambition of Korah, who tried to overthrow the leadership God had put in place. Anger, greed, and ambition. Jude is warning that these are the character traits that start to pop up from all that corrupt conduct. All right, we've reached the final stage, stage 4. The internal corruption finally becomes external. I mean, it has to come out somewhere, right? And it surfaces in the way people talk. Just like the saying goes, out of the fullness of the heart the mouth speaks. A corrupted character is always, inevitably, going to produce corrupted conversation. So, what does this actually sound like in practice? Well, Jude is super specific here. He says these individuals are constant grumblers and fault finders. You know the type, nothing is ever good enough for them. And then, on the flip side, they are boasters and flatterers. They boast about themselves to pump up their own egos, and then they'll turn around and flatter other people, but only when it helps them get what they want. It's this really toxic mix of negativity and pure self-interest. Okay, so that's a pretty grim diagnosis, right? It's pretty heavy stuff. But Jude doesn't just describe the problem and leave everyone hanging. He offers a prescription. He tells the community exactly how to deal with this situation, how to fight back against this cancer that has crept into their fellowship. And his advice isn't some one-size-fits-all solution. That's what's so smart about it. He gets that different people are at different stages of this corruption. So he outlines this really careful three-part response. It's almost like a form of medical triage for the community's spiritual health. And what's so powerful here is the nuance in his advice. For those who are just kind of wavering, wrestling with doubt, he says, be gentle, be kind. For those who are in immediate mortal danger, he says you have to act urgently, literally snatch them from the fire. But for those who have been thoroughly contaminated by these ideas and behaviors, his advice is to show mercy, but with a healthy dose of caution, a fear of getting infected yourself. It's this incredible call for both compassion and wisdom. And this really is the balance at the very heart of Jude's final advice. He ends with this amazing, soaring praise for God, the one who is able to keep them from falling. But right before that, he tells them, keep yourselves in the love of God. You see the tension there? It's not all on God, and it's not all on us. It's a partnership. We have to do our part to keep ourselves in a position where he can do his part to keep us. So in the end, this strange, severe little letter is so much more than just some ancient artifact. It's a timeless warning about the profound danger of internal corruption. And it lays out that predictable, destructive path it always takes, from bad ideas to bad behavior to bad character, and finally to bad conversation. And that leaves us with a question that is just as relevant today as it was in the first century. I mean, think about it. Whether it's a church, a company, a political movement, or really any group with a shared purpose, how can a community defend its core beliefs without destroying itself from within? How do you fight for what you believe in without falling prey to those internal cancers of anger, greed, and ambition? Jude's warning just echoes through the centuries, challenging every single one of us to look inward.